Hello and welcome back to Heart Breathings. I'm so excited to be back and sharing with you some of my best ideas, or what I would say are the best practices to follow when you're planning, writing, and actually publishing your series. So I'm going to give you 10 tips today, and some of them will be about the writing of it, and then some of them will be about the packaging and actually marketing and selling of your books. So let's get started. Okay, so we're going to go over 10 things that I would call best practices when you're going to be planning and writing and publishing your series. So these are things that come from my personal experience, as well as talking just like so many conversations with fellow authors who have been in this industry for a long time, and the knowledge that I've gotten from them, the experience I've had on my own. But I will preface these 10 things by saying you can do it your way. That's one of the most amazing things about being a creative person and putting your work out into the world. And especially as indie authors, when you're self-publishing, you get to choose. So if any one of these things is like, well, that one's not for me, then fine, don't do it. And that's great. It's either going to work for you or it's not going to work. There is no like one size fits all. This is how you write a series. This is how you make $1 million. That's going to work for everyone. In the end, you have to follow your own heart, trust your own experience, and do what feels right to you. But I would like to share with you 10 things that I feel would be helpful for almost everybody who's writing a series and wants to publish it and find an audience, or, develop a community or make some money out of your writing. So hopefully these things will resonate with you. I realized as I was outlining it that I could probably do full-length videos on each one of these 10 points. So I'm going to instead have to keep it brief and just briefly discuss each one of these in bullet points. But in the future, if there are any of these videos you'd like to see in more detail, or you're going to get a chance also to ask some Q&A, please just let me know what you'd like to hear more about from my experience, and I will definitely elaborate on that. So these 10 aren't in any particular order, except for the fact that in the beginning I tried to keep it toward the writing side and the second half is publishing, but this isn't like any order of importance. So here we go. Number 1, be consistent. And this actually applies to your entire career. The more consistent you are in the genre that you're publishing, in the way you speak to your fans, in how often you publish, in your branding, in the way that you show up, in the quality of your writing, hopefully consistently getting better over time, the more consistent you are, the better off your whole career is going to go. If you write 3 books in one YA genre and they come out, boom, 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 1, 2, 3, and you put them all into Kindle Unlimited and you're exclusive there. And then you don't write a book for 2 years. And then you come out with an epic fantasy that takes a year to write each book. And it's, a totally different price point, completely different voice. It's got a lot of, cuss words or sex in it, whereas your other book didn't. And then you disappear for another 5 years and you come back and you're writing cozy mystery. You're probably going to have some struggles when it comes to building an audience. Because while there are a lot of readers out there that will read across multiple genres, it's so much easier to build your initial fan base when you're writing one single genre and you have kind of one single brand. And in addition to that, the more consistent you are with the way you publish and the way you write, the better off you're going to be. So I shared this in my video about my biggest mistakes, that sometimes I would change the POV style, or I would change the types of covers or the way I presented my story, or I was writing this genre and then switched to another. And I feel like these things, even though I wouldn't call them regrets, are definitely some of the biggest things that have held me back in my own publishing career. If I had been more consistent with putting out releases closer together, keeping it to a single series, making sure that if I had Harper's point of view, it was Harper's point of view through the whole series, and just being more consistent in all of those areas: cover art, how often I publish, the way that I write, the types of POV, the genre that I'm writing. If I had stayed consistent with all of those things, and even consistent in communication with my email group, with my Facebook group, consistent with that sort of thing, I know that it would have been so much better. There are going to be times in your career when you just can't be consistent. You have a death in the family, or there are other things that get in the way. But this is why you should kind of plan ahead if you can for those sorts of situations. When I got myself into a situation where I'm writing 5 or 6 series all at once and something bad happens with my health, it becomes very difficult for me to stay consistent in any way. Whereas if I had just been writing a single series and I had had to take a few months off, it wouldn't have had that big of an impact. So the more consistent you can be and consistent like in your planning for the future, the better off you're going to be for your entire career. Number 2, and this again goes for both the writing and the publishing, but I'm focusing more on the writing here, is continue to learn. I've talked about this in the past, but it is so incredibly important. We all start out knowing almost nothing about how to write a novel, except maybe intuitively we have read enough or consumed enough stories that we get an idea of how a story is told. I have recently been reading some of my very first novels over on my other YouTube channel, which is just /Sarra Cannon. I'll link it for you down below. And as I was reading my very first book out loud, Beautiful Demons, I was just groaning some in the inside thinking, oh my gosh, all these mistakes, all these things I didn't know about how to tell a story. Now that story has still been incredibly successful and well loved. However, I have continued to grow in my talent and skill, not just because I have experience writing more novels, but also because I have continued to seek out books on craft. I actually just recently bought like 10 new books on how to write better. So I'm going to be covering those here on this YouTube channel. So make sure you're subscribed, but I'm constantly trying to learn more about how to be a better writer. And the 3 best ways that I learn are, number 1, by continuing to write and practice my own craft. Number 2, by reading books and watching YouTube videos and consuming resources from other people who know better than me. And number 3, by continuing to read books by really great authors. And I learned so much just by consuming stories. And this doesn't even just mean books. I also learn a lot about how to tell a great story by watching, The Avengers, or by watching certain television series that really grip you and trying to analyze, what is it about this story that I love so much, and what did the author do? And the more you analyze what other writers do, the more you learn too. So continuing to learn more about how to tell a great story is always going to be important, and it will serve you well, because even if you've written 30, 50, 75 books, there's always a next level. There's no writer in the world who has just hit perfection and can never improve. We can always improve, so continue to learn. On the flip side, that also is true for actually self-publishing. You can take a course on self-publishing, you can learn everything there is to know about Facebook ads and all of that. There's always going to be a next level. There's always going to be a tactic or a strategy you haven't tried. There's always going to be somebody that's doing something innovative that you can learn from and say, oh my gosh, look at what they're doing. Maybe I could try that too. So keeping an open mind and just continuing to put on your student hat and be open to learning more about how to be a better writer, how to market your books better, and how to get your books out in the world better, how to do social media better, how to do better newsletter lists and all of that. Just be a lifelong learner when it comes to your writing career, and that is really going to serve you well. You never are going to hit a point where it's like, well, I'm the best and I never need to learn anything else, because that would just mean that you'll fail to grow anymore in the future. Number 3, know your readers. This is another place where you can really continue to grow and learn. The more you know about the type of person who is really going to love your book and latch onto it and become a fan for life, the better off you're going to be. Now, a lot of times what we see when we think about our readers, our future readers, is we see ourselves, because we think, I'm writing the story I wish someone else had written. I'm writing the story that I love and that I want to put out into the world. So that is a great place to start. In my publishing course, we call this the ideal reader avatar, which is kind of a play on a standard marketing idea of an ideal customer avatar. So think about, who is your ideal reader? It could be you, Or it could just be a reader that you can imagine that loves your type of books. But the more you can learn about that reader, what types of TV shows they like, what types of things they have around their house, how many kids they have, or if they're single or if they're a student, if you can really kind of get an idea of who that reader is and that picture, then you're going to be able to market your books to that reader better, but you're also going to be able to tailor your series to that reader better. One of the mistakes that I see a lot of people making when they're getting started out in their writing is they say, well, I like everything. I like writing and reading science fiction and fantasy and dystopian and mystery and all of that. So I'm writing a book or I'm writing a series that doesn't really fit anywhere because I'm like putting all of these things in there, kind of like everything but the kitchen sink, which in some ways, I hate to criticize that because, like I said, there are no rules. It's either works or doesn't work. But when it comes to actually putting your book out into the world and putting it up on Amazon or Apple Books or Google Play and asking other people to read it, readers want to know, where does it fit? So let's say that you're walking through a Barnes & Noble bookstore and you see a book that is just sitting on the floor. When you pick it up and you turn it over and you read the back cover blurb and you see the cover for that book, you should be able to, as a lifelong reader, know where that book kind of fits in the store. It's possible that it's going to fit in a couple of different places. Like, sure, you could fit it in fiction and literature, but you could also fit it very easily in mysteries because you can tell from that cover with a like broke down pickup truck on an old country road and the red, drawing in the background or whatever, that this belongs in the mystery section. Or maybe it has a couple in historical dress on the cover with a flourishing brand to the title, and in the back it talks about how these two people are going to find love. It's very obvious that this fits in the romance section. If a reader were to walk into a bookstore and pick up a cover with an ambiguous image on the front and the back cover blurb is like, there's mystery, there's suspense, there's an alien ship, and there's a dystopian factor to this, and it's just this hodgepodge, that reader is probably going to feel overwhelmed. They're not going to really know where it fits. And in their mind, they're not going to be able to say, oh, this is kind of like that other thing that I liked. And chances are that reader is going to go, I don't know what kind of book this is. And they're just going to set it right back down on the floor or the nearest table. Readers like to be able to categorize things. And while your book or your series may have elements from multiple genres, it's so important as you're writing it that you begin to understand very clearly where your book fits into a bookstore. And if you can't do that, if you can't point to any other series or any other type of, fiction or anything like that that is similar to yours in any way, like there's nothing in the world like yours, it's very possible that you're going to have a hard time marketing that book or that series. It's great for your series or your style of writing to be unique, but I also want to warn you that the harder it is to identify what type of reader is going to like your book or what other things your ideal reader also enjoys, the harder it's going to be for you to market your books and to get them into the hands of the right readers. You need to have a clear and identifiable genre. Even if it's a genre mashup to some degree, you need to decide where this fits. Then you need to understand on an intimate level what readers of that primary genre come to expect from those types of books. So if you were writing, let's say, a mystery series, it is going to be so important for you to understand what type of mystery, what type of niche mystery you're writing. Is it a psychological thriller? Is it a domestic thriller? Is it a twisty, turny kind of horror mystery? Is it a detective police procedural? Is it a cozy mystery? And if you don't have any idea what those different types of subgenres or niches are all about, then as you're writing, you need to figure that out. If you want to be able to sell your books, this is incredibly important. And I cannot stress it enough that you really come to understand what type of book it is you're writing and what readers in that genre come to expect. So when I say know your readers, I'm talking about know what they like, know what they come to expect, and be able to turn it around and say, if I was looking at my book in a bookstore, what type of reader would pick it up? And if they had to go and shelve it in the bookstore or the library, where would they put it? So if you can go ahead and be thinking on that level as you're actually writing the book and writing the series, you're going to be way ahead of the game when it comes to marketing your series and publishing it later. Number 4 is also a difficult one, and this goes back to consistency, which many of these will, which is to focus in on a single genre or series in the beginning. I mentioned this before because this is not something that I have been able to do since kind of after my first series, but I do feel like one of the biggest things that got me started and is why I became as successful as I was right from the start is because I had a single series that was very clearly branded, very easy to identify where it belonged in, the bookshelves, so to speak. And I published only in that one series for 6 full books before I switched genres or anything like that. I was super consistent, and that jump-started my whole career. If you love writing in multiple genres, multiple pen names, multiple series, all that kind of stuff, feel free to play and do whatever your creative muse wants to do. But when it comes to your publishing plan for that series, it's so important to start with a single series, a single pen name, a single strategy until you start to gain traction. Because if you popcorn all around this series, this genre, this, pen name, you're going to have a difficult time managing it all. And you may not be able to see that if you haven't started publishing yet. You're thinking, oh no, I know I can write this fast and I can do all these different things. But once you start publishing, it's going to be a whole new ball game because there's going to be a lot of marketing. There's going to be websites and social media and ads and all these other things that you need to learn. And it becomes harder to find time to write. So if you stretched yourself thin over multiple things, you're not only asking yourself to stretch your attention, but your creativity. And that's just on your level. Then when it comes to your readers, you're not giving them that consistent series or consistent genre to really latch onto and sort of dig their fingers into. Instead, you're like making their head spin, and you're just not going to find success 90% of the time as fast as you would if you stuck to a single genre, a single pen name, and even a single series. I know this is really hard advice to follow. Like I said, I've had a hard time following this myself, but this is where I'm headed in the future. And I'm telling you, do as I say, not as I do, because this is super important. And I did do it in the beginning, and it really is what gave me a leg up and has allowed me to have this amazing career ever since. If I had not been so consistent in the beginning with that one series, I wouldn't probably be where I am today. Number 5, keep really good and detailed notes about your series. And this is true for the writing and for the publishing. So I have an entire video. If you missed it, I will link it for you down below on how to create a series Bible. I make mine inside a wiki, but you can use OneNote, Evernote, Scrivener. You can just use Word. Anything you need to use. You can even use paper binders. Keep detailed notes about everything that happens in your story world, because that is not only going to help you be, number 1 tip, consistent, but it's also going to save you so much time and energy as you write subsequent books in your series. Trust me on this. The same is true for when you're actually publishing your books. Keep detailed notes about what keywords you tried, what categories you went into, what are your blurbs, what's your price point. And then as you switch and change, because your covers might change, you might try different keywords, you might try a different type of marketing strategy. Keep detailed notes about what you've done, which version of your book is currently uploaded, what your back matter is. Keep track of all of your metadata. If you're not sure what that is, Google it because it's super important. When you're keeping the details of your series, not only inside your series world as you're writing it, but also as you're publishing it, just be as detailed as you can. I highly recommend keeping detailed backups inside some kind of digital program so that you don't lose them. But it's just so important to keep track of stuff, because as much as you might think 1 or 2 books in that you're doing a great job keeping track of it now, it's going to start to grow and get a little bit more and more overwhelming as time goes on, because there's just going to be a lot to keep track of, including once you start publishing your sales numbers and everything else. So keep detailed records. Number 6 also goes back to that idea of consistency. When you're publishing your series, have consistent branding. What I mean by branding is the messaging and the imagery around your series. For example, my Shadow Demon Saga that you can see a couple of the books here, 3 of the books here, they all look like a set. They have the same cover model on the front. My name is in exactly the same font and the same location and makeup at the top. The title of the book is in the same font with the same type of flourish and spacing every single time on the bottom of the book, and it just looks consistent. So if you were to see these on the Amazon store or the Apple store, your eye would be able to immediately go to it and be like, oh, that's a Sarra Cannon book, because on all my paranormal books like this, my name looks exactly the same and it's always at the top and it's just right there for you to see. So it's easy to see that these books belong together. The titles I also branded really nicely. So you've got Beautiful Demons, Inner Demons, Bitter Demons, Shadow Demons, and readers may not remember Shadow versus Rival and which one was book 4 and which one was book 5, but they remember that it has that demons to it. And so whenever they see that on a subconscious level, their eyes begin to recognize that these books go together. It's also branded really clearly as a young adult series. So you can look at it and you can easily tell, oh, this is magical because there's magical flourishes. This is a little bit mysterious and you can tell the mystery on the covers. This is something that's obviously young adult because we've got a young girl and it's just branded that way. So your branding is extremely important and you can take it up a notch if you want. So not just branding your series to itself, but also branding your social media and your author website and your logo to your genre, basically. And this is one of those ways that consistency can play a role when it comes to all of these things kind of working in synergy, because you could have a beautiful logo that uses the same font that you use on your book for your name. You can have a website that uses similar colors so that everything looks good together. And when someone visits your website, they can tell, oh, this is a young adult author and I can see her book covers and they all look well together. And the types of things I talk about on my blog are almost always related to young adult, paranormal, witches, ghosts, or to my writing life as an author. Tarot cards, spells, all of those kind of things. So everything is very tightly branded toward the type of books I write and the type of things that I know my readers will enjoy. So the better and more consistent you can be with your branding across each individual book, but also your entire author career, the better off you're going to be when it comes to attracting the right type of readers. Number 7, publish as consistently and as frequently as possible. This is one that has so much that I could say about it. I do have a previous video on my thoughts about rapid releasing, which is when you release a book like every month or every 6 weeks. So I will link that for you down below as well. But my general advice is to publish as frequently as you can with your very best foot forward. So I don't recommend to anyone to just put books out as fast as possible if you know they're going to be below what your quality of writing is. So stick to your personal standards in terms of how fast you can write a really great book and get it produced, but try to do it as quickly and consistently as possible. Writers, especially in the indie space, are going to be all over the place when it comes to this. Some writers are only going to be able to put out 1 book a year, but it's going to be an amazing book, hopefully, if you spent the whole year working on it. Other writers you're going to see out there, they're going to be people who are putting out 20 books a year. Sometimes those books are ghostwritten and those authors are just producing those books. Sometimes their books are maybe only 15,000 words and they're just putting out a lot of books very quickly. But sometimes it will actually be true that an author is just writing a book a month or more than a book a month, and this is their genre and they're doing a great job with it. Most of us, however, are going to write a little bit slower or maybe a lot slower than a book a month. When it comes to indie publishing, however, if there is any way that you can keep consistent enough to put out a book every 3 to 4 months in your series, you are going to be so much better off than someone who is putting out a book once a year or once every 2 years. I have watched the algorithms. I watch what's happening with other people's series. when you start to put more than 3 to 4 months between series releases, you start to lose more fans than you would otherwise. And this is one of those harsh realities. And I'm sitting here staring in the face of 2 years since my previous book in the Shadow Demon saga. So the panic has started to set in, and that has just been my life circumstances. But I know, and I can see those numbers, that as I wait 2 years, I am losing fans all the way around, because there are just too many other things that fans can get invested in. There's more books, there's other TV series, there's games that they can play, there's all kinds of stuff. And we live in a very instant gratification type of society where readers like to have that next thing. Netflix will sometimes release an entire season all at once and people will binge watch it. Readers also love to binge read. They will, however, once they love your series, they will wait for that next book. But it's in your best interest not to make them wait more than 3 or 4 months if you can help it. Now, I say that obviously with a grain of salt because I can't keep up that pace and I'm still a 6-figure-a-year author and it works out fine. But if you can, at least in the very beginning, put out your books pretty consistently every 3 to 4 months, even if that means you have to pre-write your books before you release them, like hold them back before you release them. That 3 to 4 months is kind of a sweet spot when it comes to it. If you can go faster than 3 to 4 months, that can actually really work great for you. But be sure to check out my video on rapid release because there are some downsides to rapid release that a lot of people don't address very often. So I'd love for you to get that full picture. But if you can, 3 to 4 months between series releases. Now, saying that, if you're writing 2 series, then that means you're going to have to be writing a book every month or 2 in order to keep up with both series. So that's why I warn you about writing too many series, too many genres, because if you really want to get your career off the ground, 3 to 4 months is kind of your sweet spot. Now, if you're slower than that, don't panic. You can still have a great career. It just might take you really thinking through your strategy, maybe putting out some short stories and things like that. If you're interested in hearing more about how to get this kind of strategy going, I highly recommend my Publish and Thrive course. But if you were unable to afford it or get in on this round, come join us next year. Or if you have any requests about me discussing more about marketing strategy, put those in the comments down below and I'll see if I can come up with a video for you guys sometime in the near future. So number 8 is to use a loss leader to attract more readers and actually to consistently attract readers. So a loss leader is basically just an entry product, the beginning of your series usually, but that first thing that most readers are going to discover from you, some people will call this a reader magnet, that draws readers in and gets them hooked on your series. The reason I call it a loss leader is because you're not going to be charging very much for this. This is going to be a book that's either free or 99 cents or whatever, something that you're willing to lose money on to lead people into your funnel or your series in general. So if you choose to go wide, meaning that your books are going to be available at Barnes & Noble and Google and Kobo and Apple as well as Amazon, then this is the hands down best strategy that you could have for your series, is to have a series of at least 5 or 6 books with a loss leader entry place. Usually for most types of series, except those standalone series we talked about, you kind of have some leeway there. It's going to be the very first book in your series. So for example, I have a 10-book series with my Shadow Demon saga. People can't jump in because it's a dynamic series. They can't jump in at book 9 and understand what's going on. So my only option for a loss leader is book 1 of the series. And actually, because I have such a long series, I offer the first 3 books for free, partially because these 3 are shorter books. They're only on the 47 to 60,000 word range, whereas my later books are over 100,000 words. So this gives them a really good taste of what's going on in the series, and it also gets them hooked in those 3 books. So I use 3 books as a loss leader, and those 3 free books make me so much more money than they ever could have at full price or $2 or $3.99 a piece, because so many more readers are willing to download a free book and give me a try, and then they get hooked. So if you have that great first book, use it as a loss leader. Free works great. I wouldn't set a book free until you've got several books behind it, because you only make the money and get the consistent readership and the loyal readership if they have more to read. But it's perfect to have, once you start getting books published in your series, to have that entry point that is a loss leader. Now, if you're in Kindle Unlimited, this is Amazon's program where you are exclusive to Amazon. All the readers who have Kindle Unlimited are going to be able to download your book for free anyway, because they're in this subscription model. So it's not as important to see that book one as a loss leader, but it is important to know where your entry levels to your series are. How are readers going to discover you? And then use that as the basis of your marketing. Like I said, I could do a whole video on this just to understand, and I do actually have an older video where I talk about loss leaders, but just understand that as you begin to publish your series, one of your very best marketing tools is going to be whatever that entry book is. I highly recommend that your loss leader be something that is a full-length novel, not just a short story or a novella. Now, when we talk about cookies, or you talk about something you're offering as a freebie for your mailing list, that's a little bit different. But when it comes to the number one entry point to your main series, your loss leader, I highly recommend that it's a full-length novel that is not a seasonal book. So no Christmas novellas as your main loss leader. If you have a 10-book series, that first book needs to be a full-length novel that is putting your best foot forward. And it's not like a prequel to your main couple. It's not a prequel to your main story. It is the beginning of the story, because you want readers to download that first book at a lesser price or at free, and you want them to be hooked into your whole series. So I didn't write a prequel thing to my Shadow Demon Saga and offer that for free. I gave them the first 3 full books. And by the time they finish the 3rd book, if they're not hooked, then it's just not for them. But a lot of people are hooked, and I have tens of thousands of readers that have gone on to buy book 4 and continue on to read the rest of the series. And this is one of the strongest marketing tools and one of the best practices you will find, especially if your books are wide. And number 9, make it easy for your readers to buy your next book. So in terms of best practices, when you're selling your books, make it as easy as possible for readers to find out what you're working on next, to find out where to buy your next book, to find out how to buy your next book, how much it's going to cost, what it's about. So this means being active on social media of some kind. You don't have to be active on all the social medias, but just make sure you have some kind of platform for your author career where you're talking to your readers about what's coming next, what you're working on, what you're excited about. It can be Facebook, it can be Instagram, it can just be your own blog, but it's just so important to have some kind of author platform. This also goes for having a website. You need to have an author website where you've got all your books listed, links to all the stores and all the places where your books are available, so that when a reader goes looking for you, let's say they pick up that lost leader and they loved that first book, you make it easy for them to head over to your website and see what other books you have, one click onto something and purchase it immediately. If your reader has to Google things and go looking for where are her books available, what else does she have reading, and they can't find the answers, then you've got a problem. So just to give you a quick example, I was seeing this with my Shadow Demon Saga because, like I told you, I have short stories and side stories and spin-off things. And I started to realize that a lot of people had questions and they didn't understand that Sacrifice Me was a spin-off, or that A Demon's Wrath was Jackson's story. And so they didn't know what order to read it in. And because they were just slightly confused about how it all worked, they weren't buying all the books. They would just buy the books 1 through 10 and not read the side stories. Well, what I did to fix that, obviously, was start talking about it more on social media. I put it into my Facebook group, and then I also put a tab on my web page that says reading order. And on that page, people can find all of the short stories, all the side stories, the ideal reading order for how they should consume it. And immediately my sales went up. And now anytime anyone asks about how do I read this, what other stories are involved, there's an easy place to send them to let them know. This also goes for having a newsletter list. I don't know why so many authors resist the idea of having a mailing list, maybe because you don't want to come into someone's inbox and feel like you're advertising to them, but it is extremely important and it's a must-have as part of your overall author platform and brand to have some way to directly notify your readers that the next book is out, this book has a release date, here's my cover art, here's some fun things I'm doing, here's what I'm working on right now. And you need to have it set up right when your first book goes live, if not before. And if you can, best practice, have a link in the back and the front of your ebook that says, if you want to follow me more online, make sure that you're signed up for my newsletter list and you're following me there. Then keep up with those people. I highly recommend a book called Newsletter Ninja by Tammy Labrecque. I will link that for you down below because it is the definitive book about author newsletters and why it is so very important. So when it comes to your newsletter, you can actually link a sign up button on your Facebook page. You can have a link to sign up for your newsletter on your Instagram or other social media. You should definitely have a link to sign up on your website. But all of these things are so important because they help make it so much easier for readers to find other books by you and to continue to buy things from you. So the easier you can make it for them to one click buy your entire backlog or backlist of books, the better. This also goes for the actual back matter of your book, which is like once the reader has hit the end, what are those last few pages in your ebook that say like, hey, if you loved this book, you'll love book 2 in the series, here's a link. You'll want to learn how to optimize your back matter to make sure that it's easy when a reader finishes that book and they're still on the high of, oh my God, that cliffhanger, or oh my gosh, that was the sweetest love story ever, or whatever feeling you left them with at the end of the book. You want them to turn that page and have a link immediately to buy another one of your books. And if this is the last book in the series, then you definitely want that first link to be sign up for my newsletter and get this free story. That's the cookie we were talking about. Read Tammy Labrecque's book. Or sign up for my newsletter so you get an announcement as soon as the next book is out. But you want to make sure that it's easy for readers to find you online, to understand where to buy your other books, and make it as easy as possible for them to buy the next book in your series if it's available. All this stuff is so important, and I highly recommend, if you're wide, to actually put vendor-specific links in the back of your ebooks. I'm only going to touch on this briefly, but basically what I mean by that is when you upload your book to Apple Books, the link that says buy book 2 should be an Apple Books link, not a link back to your website where the reader has to go out of the ebook, go to your website, click on the link, go back to Apple, and then purchase the book. It should be a link directly to that vendor, which means you're going to have to do a slightly separate file for Amazon that sends readers back to Amazon, a special file for Google that sends readers back to Google, but it makes it easy. And I would call these vendor-specific links in the back of your ebook. You want to make it as easy as possible. I see a lot of authors that use universal links like books to read from draft to digital, but I highly recommend in the back of your book, you just use that one-click vendor-specific link. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. But if you're at that point where you're already formatting your book, just keep that in mind as a best practices advice from me. Okay, our final tip, number 10, is stay true to yourself. And I know that you're like, that's not a best practice. I wanted a marketing tip. But when it comes to your own happiness and your own true success in this business, this is not even tip number 10. This is tip number 1. Stay true to yourself. You can hear advice from me. You'll certainly hear advice all over the internet from other people who have experience or who think they know what's best. And you will hear people that have all kinds of opinions and agendas for what they believe about their own career, including me. But in the end, you're the one who has to live this life. You're the one who's writing these books and putting your work out there in the way that makes the most sense to you. If you make a decision based on your own fear or someone else's fear, like for example, a very popular thing to say right now to people is, well, you have to go into Kindle Unlimited because that's the only way you can make any money. But that's just not true for everyone. For some people, Kindle Unlimited, which is Amazon's exclusivity program, makes a lot of sense because of the genre they're writing or how fast they write or just the simple ease of it or whatever. Maybe that does align with you, but you shouldn't make the decision to go all in with Kindle Unlimited and put your entire career in Amazon's hands alone just because somebody told you that's the only way you're going to make money. You need to really look at the industry, learn what's happening, think long term instead of just how do I make money as fast as possible. Stop and think, what do I want my career to look like long term? Do I really just want to be only at Amazon and have them in control of my whole life? Or am I doing that because somebody told me I should? Or am I doing that because I'm scared that it's the only way? You really need to look at the whole picture and look inside yourself and try to drown out that noise that says, do it this way, do it this way. And instead think, what is right for me? What do I want long term? What aligns with my personal values? How do I want to interact with readers? Because people can tell you, you have to have a Facebook group. It's the only way. Everybody who's anybody is on Facebook. But maybe you don't like Facebook. Maybe it doesn't align with your values. Don't compromise your own personal values just because somebody else told you this is the way you need to do it. You could be just as successful with a blog and an Instagram account and never having a Facebook page in your life. So don't follow someone else's advice when it just doesn't feel right to you. Woo, some thunder here. I don't know if you guys heard that, but God agrees with me. So really, I want to drive this home because it is fundamental to your happiness and your joy. There are a lot of things about putting your work out there that are going to be very scary. And because you feel vulnerable, you're also going to be vulnerable to other people's advice. I know this from very personal experience because I knew that I wanted to write these sort of YA mystery, even college age kind of mystery, horror, YA kind of paranormal things. I had an idea of the type of thing that I wanted to write, very Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the college years kind of stuff. But when I first started getting writing, I had a whole group of people that said to me, that's never going to sell. You're never going to make a career out of that. You really should be writing romance because it's easier to make money writing romance. So even though this was not true to who I am as a writer, that's what I started writing, contemporary billionaire romance. And there's nothing wrong with those books. I love reading those books, but it's not aligned with who I am. And I wasted 2 years of my life writing stuff that really wasn't what I was meant to be writing because I was so scared and I was so vulnerable that I followed that advice of this is the best way to make money. But let me tell you right now, if you hear nothing else from this video, please hear this. Making money is not going to make you happy. It's going to help. It's going to be so exciting, but in the end, it's really about, are you following your heart? Are you doing what you were meant to do and what you were put on this earth to do? If you have a story inside you that you want to put out into the world, write true to yourself, stay true to your own values. And if somebody else is telling you, this is the way you need to do it and blah, 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 you need to check in with yourself, take a deep breath, take stock, and think about your personal vision for the future, what you really want your career to be. And then think, does that align with that future or not? And if not, then it's okay to go your own way and follow your own path. You don't have to follow someone else's advice. Find someone else to take advice from. And even if that means you don't like my advice, I'm okay with that. Just be true to yourself and what you know is right. I can promise you that following your heart, even if you make mistakes along the way, which I readily have admitted to you and spilled the tea on my own mistakes, you will be so much more happy and so much more fulfilled because you followed your heart and you stayed true to yourself. And that goes so much farther than another zero in your bank account. And I know that some of you will be like, screw that, I'm here for the money, which I totally understand that. But I'm telling you right now that even though there are some people that will tell you, you have to do it this way to make money, you can follow your own dreams, follow your own path, write the genre you want. If I had $1 for everybody who told me you can't make money writing YA as an indie, I would be a millionaire because there are so many people that believe that. And yet here I am having made over $1 million writing YA. And that's because that's what I love to write and that's what I want to continue writing. So I'm just here to tell you that I'm living proof that you can follow your own dreams and you can make it happen for yourself. So figure out what you want to write, how you want to do it, how you want to show up in the world, and then make it happen for yourself. Listen, learn, keep being consistent, keep trusting yourself and following your instincts and learning from your own mistakes, and you're going to be fine. Because there is no like, do it this way and make money, or you follow your dreams and fail. You can follow your dreams and write what you love and still make lots of money. So it's not necessarily a choice. It's just a matter of figuring out what aligns with your personal values and going there. So yeah. Number 10, stay true to yourself. Okay, those are my 10 best practices for writing and publishing a series. Next week, we are going to have a Q&A. So if you would like to submit a question to the Q&A, I will have a Google form down below. I'll also be posting a question to my Instagram stories if you want to leave the questions there. I'm sure that I won't get to every single question, but I will try to group them into some of the questions. And I think I'm just going to do a live Q&A, but I haven't fully decided. It'll either be live or recorded, but I will let you guys know over on my social media, and I will schedule it in. If it's going to be live, I'll make sure to schedule it in advance. So I will see you next Thursday for that live video. If you are not yet subscribed to this channel, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I would love to see you in next week's video. And that's all I have for now. I will see you all this weekend for another September notebook challenge. I'm looking forward to showing you some of my new notebooks, and I sincerely hope that you will hit the thumbs up button and comment down below to let me know which one of these 10 tips you thought was the most valuable. All right, guys, I will see you in my next video. Bye.